What's up, y'all? DIRK here. Welcome to another episode. Today is part 2 of my How to Start a Garden series, and today we're going to be talking about preparing your garden plot for planting. Let's get into it. So once you've selected your garden plot, the first thing that you're going to want to analyze is what's currently growing there. Are there invasive grasses, weeds? Because in this spot behind me, we had a lot of different types of grasses. We did have some invasive Bermuda grass, and so you're gonna have to assess that situation first. The reason we want to assess that is you don't just want to, dig a hole and plant your plant in the ground. Those weeds and those grasses are going to be a pain to deal with in your garden, and so that's why that's the first thing we need to do. If you have the time in your garden, the best thing that you could possibly do is tarp that location. What that's going to do is that's going to kill off any of those grasses and weeds. It's going to germinate those weed seeds, and then it's going to basically cook them. And so the reason we tarp it, when that sun comes down, it basically bakes that area of the ground, and so that's going to kill off all of that. But that's if you have 6 months to a year. However, most people don't, and they're wanting to get gardening quickly. So your next best bet is to do raised garden beds, and I'm going to show you one of mine right now. So this is a raised garden bed that I built, and it's pretty simple. Right now I'm not really using it, so it's got some weeds and things growing in it, but it's very easy, and you can simply start building that over the top of your soil, and you're not going to have to deal with any of those grasses and weeds growing. I'm personally a huge fan of doing raised beds, which is what I just showed you. The negatives to doing raised beds: first off, you have the lumber cost. Second off, you have the cost of bringing in compost or topsoil and filling those garden beds, those raised beds up with that soil. It's labor intensive and it's pretty costly. However, the pro to that is you can bring in some really good soil, and that's going to be really productive for your first year garden. If you're not going to do raised beds, your next best bet is to do what I did here in my location. I had the current grass growing. I did not tarp it, but what I did is I got cardboard from just local stores in my area, and I laid down some 30-foot long by 30 inches wide of cardboard. And what I did from there, I laid that on the ground over the top of the grass, and then I put about 5 inches to 6 inches of compost that I brought in to go on top of it. Now, you're going to want to do that early on in the winter, because you want that cardboard to have time to break down so that when you do plant, those roots can get below that cardboard. The cardboard should break down pretty quickly, but you need to make sure that you remove any tape and things like that aren't going to break down in the soil quickly. That's what I did here, and so I'm going to show you what mine looks like. So here is my garden currently. I've got a ton of cover crop that I've planted, and so as you can see, I've got long rows. These are about 30 inches wide, and I laid cardboard down from here to here, and then I laid compost over the top of it, and that has been my method. Now, I still do have grasses in the middle. They're non-invasive, and so when I mow our yard, I actually just come through the middle of my walkways and weed eat it. However, there are some different ways that you can mitigate and get rid of the grass, but I chose to keep it because it's not invading my garden beds, and so it works perfect for my context. But that is what I did. It was somewhat cost effective, but I still had to bring in the compost because I wasn't really confident in the current soil that I had, the native soil, and so that's why I brought in the compost, and that's also why I'm planting fall cover crop right now, is because I'm trying to build that soil up, because the compost I brought in was not the best. So those are the two methods that I recommend if you're starting from scratch on the ground and you're trying to get your garden plot ready to go. And the reason I encourage that, and I encourage bringing in some type of compost, because most of the time the soil that you have is the native soil that you have is just more than likely not going to be very productive, unless you just live in a very fertile environment and your ground is ready to go and be productive for vegetables. So if you have the time and the space and the energy and the resources, I would highly encourage doing raised beds. That is honestly my favorite. I didn't do it here just because it would have cost a lot of money. But if not, you can lay down the cardboard and, you know, lay that 6 inches of compost on top, and you should be ready to go for your first year. If you're in an apartment, your best bet is to go get some grow bags. You can buy those from, I think, Farmer's Friend or Bootstrap Farmer, I can't remember, but you can get grow bags a lot of places, even Amazon. And so that will allow you to put those grow bags on your patio, and so that when you ever move out of that apartment, you can transport those plants to your new property. And so you will need to go get some good quality potting soil from your local nursery. I would just vet them well. There are weed seeds in that potting soil or that compost that you're getting. Make sure you vet your supplier really well, because I've made some bad mistakes when I brought in compost in the past. One tip I will give you is don't rush the process of getting your garden ready to go and building the raised beds and bringing in good compost and getting good quality potting soil or topsoil or super soil, whatever you're getting from your local nursery or your local store. Make sure it's high quality, because the end result, if it's not high quality, will be unhealthy plants. And so spend the money to get great soil. If there's one thing I could tell you to invest in, invest your money in your soil. It's going to help the productivity and the fruitfulness of those plants tenfold. Lastly, I'll say there's a million methods to getting your garden started. These are just a couple that I recommend. Obviously, we've got the raised beds, and then you've got the method of laying down cardboard and doing 6 inches of compost on top. And so, like I said, there's a million different ways. You can do the grow bags. But if you have any questions, please comment below. I am here as a resource to help you. That's ultimately my passion. And comment below and tell me what you're doing. Maybe you have a different method of garden preparation, and I would love to hear about it. If you did find this video helpful, please click like and subscribe. Next week on this series, we're going to be talking about your propagation or your seed starting setup. I've got an indoor greenhouse that I use to start all my seeds. You're going to want something along those lines, or else you're going to spend a fortune buying started plants at Home Depot or Lowe's or your local nursery. I'll start everything from seed. That's what we're going to talk about next week. See ya soon.